The 5-year-old Suyu, with a cherubic voice, called out, "Wife!" I merely took his innocent words as the musings of childhood and patiently coaxed him. "Be good, call me uncle." At 15, Suyu murmured in his dreams, "Wife." I assumed it was merely a fleeting phase of adolescence and subtly shifted his arm, which was wrapped around my waist. At 20, Suyu, with a playful smile, effortlessly grasped my fist as I swung it toward him, laughing exuberantly, "Wife, you are quite fierce." 1. My brother and sister-in-law have been married for many years, yet they have not been blessed with children. Consequently, they decided to adopt a child from an orphanage. 5-year-old Suyu is adorably plump, with a fair complexion that makes him all the more delightful. I took an instant liking to my newly arrived nephew, indulging in several playful pinches of his chubby cheeks. However, little Suyu suddenly tilted his head and called out loudly, "Auntie." I was taken aback. The room filled with adults fell silent, only to erupt into uproarious laughter. Amidst the merriment, I stubbornly corrected him, saying, "Call me uncle."
Suyu obediently complied.
Yet the adults continued to treat the incident as a joke, recounting it time and again. When he turned 15, my sister-in-law gave birth to a son. Suyu remained my nominal eldest nephew, and that year, I spent the new year at my brother's home, sharing a room with him. He had grown impressively, nearing my height, making the small bed a bit cramped for both of us. In the dead of night, I awoke to find him half draped over me, his arm wrapped tightly around me. He mumbled, "Wifey." I was momentarily stunned. However, at that age, it was indeed the time for youthful infatuations. I discreetly pried his arm away. As I watched him flourish, he made the decision to terminate our adoption relationship when he turned 18. My brother and sister-in-law were reluctant to let him go but respected his choice, for although the legal bond had ended, our emotional connection remained. Yet, I found it incomprehensible how our bond could transform into something so unrecognizable. When had he strayed from the right path, choosing to suppress his uncle beneath him? 2. After completing my studies abroad, I returned to my alma mater to teach. "Shao-Chi, Suyu has been accepted into your university. Has he reached out to you?" My brother called while I was overwhelmed with lesson preparations, and I absent-mindedly responded before ending the call. It wasn't until the late hours, after I had finished my tasks, that the realization dawned on me. In the years I spent abroad, I had not returned even once, nor had I seen him. Occasionally, he would like my posts on social media, but his own account was conspicuously barren. I opened our chat, where our last conversation had lingered for a year, him asking when I would return. I was taken aback, leaping from my bed. He had indeed reached out to me, yet I had failed to respond. How could I have completely forgotten? I racked my brain, recalling that during that hectic period of preparing for graduation, I had been utterly exhausted, my responses reduced to mere mental impulses. Surely he couldn't think that I no longer regarded him as family? After all, legally, our relationship had been severed. I cursed myself silently. Taking a deep breath, I sent a smiley emoji. Good, I hadn't been blocked. Remembering my brother's words, I crafted a message. "Suyu, your classes start tomorrow, right? I'll come help you. Wishing you a vibrant and successful university life." Almost immediately, I saw the typing indicator. I waited impatiently and finally, he replied, "You seem like an old person now." I widened my eyes, incredulous, rereading the message multiple times. An old person? How could that be? However, it is true that the system's smiley emoji is seldom used. Fine, I'll show you my youthful vitality when we meet tomorrow. After stewing in irritation all night, I began preparing myself early the next morning. After much effort, I glanced in the mirror. The image of a broad-shouldered, slim-waisted, reserved university professor should certainly silence Suyu. 3. The moment I saw him, I realized how much I had lost. He made no effort to embellish himself, effortlessly donning a simple sweatshirt that hung loosely yet radiated youthful charm. My early morning preparations suddenly felt somewhat ludicrous. He raised a hand in greeting. How dazzling he was! Several female gazes around us drifted toward him. Oblivious to the attention, he stood before me. After 2 or 3 years apart, he had grown taller than me by half a head. "Once I've settled into my dorm, I'll take you out for a meal," he said. As I bent down to help him with his suitcase, he skillfully sidestepped my assistance. He pursed his lips, stating, "I'll carry it myself. Don't strain your back." This boy had grown quite sharp-tongued. I was unable to lend a hand, as Suyu adeptly managed everything on his own. When I suggested going out to eat, he glanced at his phone and declined. I stood there, mouth agape. Sorry, I have plans with my roommate. It was impossible not to feel disappointed. After being family for over a decade, the sudden distance felt rather hard to accept. Yet, he indeed should engage more with his roommates, as they would need to coexist harmoniously for 4 years. When Suyu lifted his gaze from the screen, perhaps catching a glimpse of my melancholy, his expression softened slightly. I quickly patted his shoulder, saying, "It's all right. There will be plenty of opportunities to eat together in the future." With that, I swiftly turned and left. Even that night, I found myself seeking solace in my thoughts. The child had grown up, preferring not to spend time with elders. I understood. Truthfully, I wasn't particularly eager to dine with him anyway. What a laugh. After all, I was too busy, and mealtime would only waste my time. Damn you, Suyu. After showering, I settled into bed, grabbing a book from my nightstand. I flipped through a couple of pages but became increasingly restless. Checking my phone, I noticed a message from Suyu had just come in. "I missed curfew. What should I do?" I immediately sat up straight. "Are you all outside? Just knock on the door, and the dorm supervisor will let you in. It's just me." Why was he alone when we had planned to eat out together? I pressed down my confusion and replied, "Have your roommates returned to the dorm? Ask them to let you in. They should be asleep. They don't like being disturbed."
What a predicament.
As I pondered, he sent another message. "Is it inconvenient for you?" 4. The apartment I lived in was assigned by the school. It had 2 bedrooms and a living room. I had converted the second bedroom into a study, so if he came over, he would have to sleep on the sofa or squeeze in with me. During the brief taxi ride it took him to arrive, I hurriedly tidied up the cluttered room. I was pleasantly surprised that he had chosen to come over. After all, family is still family, and in times of trouble, he instinctively relied on me. Suyu arrived quickly, and upon seeing his attire, I understood why he had returned late. What a disciplined young man. Going to the gym on the very first day of school. He entered and surveyed the room, remaining silent. I offered him the clothes I had prepared, but Suyu merely glanced at them and declined. "No need. I showered at the gym." Besides, he lifted his gaze, a playful glint in his eyes. "It looks tight. Can't wear it." I was bewildered, glancing down to see that the top item was a brand new pair of underwear I had just unearthed. Goodness, was he implying something? He must be teasing me. I was not adept at retorting, and in that moment, I couldn't muster a single word, feeling utterly exasperated. He casually wandered around the apartment, and when he emerged from the bathroom, he leaned against the wall with his arms crossed, casually asking, "No women around?" Still preoccupied with his earlier comment, I snapped back, "No." "So you raised an eyebrow? Not now? Or have you never had one?" With my days consumed by work, where would I find the time for romance? He seemed somewhat surprised. "You never reply to me, and I thought you were lost in a world of tenderness." Regarding this matter, I felt the need to apologize. I'm sorry. I was just too busy with studies and may have forgotten to respond." So you paused, taking a couple of steps closer. "So your family isn't pressuring you about it?" I was uncertain why he kept fixating on this question, and the shift in how he addressed me left me feeling somewhat uncomfortable. "So you, although I am no longer your uncle in name, I still feel as though we are family. You may continue to call me uncle or perhaps teacher now. I would rather not use those titles." Unbeknownst to me, he had drawn close enough to block a patch of light overhead. "How about calling me wife?" I was momentarily taken aback, shock coursing through me, my heart nearly faltering. Fortunately, I quickly realized he was referencing a childhood joke. At this moment, we were both grown men, and the implication of this jest felt somewhat delicate. I managed a dry chuckle, eager to shift the topic. However, Suyu's expression was serious enough to evoke a hint of fear within me. The curve of his lips deepened, his gaze entangled with my face, and the atmosphere turned decidedly suggestive. "Dateme, Sui." Until Suyu departed, I remained in a state of disbelief. He assured me he would grant me time to ponder his words, and after spending the night on the sofa, he returned to school at dawn. I was restless, unable to sleep. Initially, I thought he was jesting, but his steady gaze and deliberate tone made it clear. "If you insist on dismissing this, I will promptly begin my formal pursuit." After nearly 3 years apart, I was unexpectedly confronted with a confession from my own nephew. Such an explosive event would be hard to believe if recounted. Yet it was indeed real, not a mere figment of my imagination. When I spotted Suyu approaching me from a distance at school, my scalp prickled with anxiety. In such a vast institution, how could I possibly encounter him? He was accompanied by several peers, their laughter creating a jovial atmosphere. Help! There was still a considerable distance to traverse. How could I move forward? I found myself unconsciously mirroring his movements, my body stiff as if just assembled. Having spoken at the opening ceremony, a keen-eyed student recognized me and loudly greeted, "Hello, teacher. Dear student, you are in college now. Do not be overly concerned about whether your teacher is walking nearby." The sheer innocence radiating from that student was almost overwhelming. As I faced several scrutinizing gazes, I forced a smile and nodded in acknowledgement. Suyu let out a soft chuckle. Teacher Su is truly adorable. My face flushed instantly. As I hung my head, waiting for them to pass, Suyu, however, halted beside me. In a voice only we could hear, he softly inquired, "Have you made up your mind?" I nervously glanced at the others, who remained blissfully unaware and had already walked a bit ahead. "Stop joking around, Suyu. I am not joking." He stepped closer, slightly bowing his head, leaving but a fist's distance between us. Suyu, his classmates finally noticed his absence and called for him. Suyu feigned ignorance, turning his head slightly, inching closer, and out of the corner of my eye, I noticed him raise his hand, slowly reaching towards my face. My mind went blank. Surely he couldn't be. Did you really walk around like this? He stepped back, straightening up, twirling a fallen leaf that had somehow landed atop my head. What did you think I was going to do? I hastily raised my gaze, only to see his face alight with mischief, and it dawned on me that I had been played. Quick, we should go. Your classmates are calling for you. He pressed the leaf into my palm, his fingernails deliberately grazing my skin. If you continue to evade me, I shall act as you suspect. With that, he withdrew his hand, turning to rejoin his classmates, leaving me alone in the wind, utterly flustered. I genuinely suspected he had implanted a tracking device on me, as he always seemed to find me effortlessly. While dining in the cafeteria, he plopped down beside me with a tray in hand. "Why are you only eating meat, Teacher Su? Your nutrition is unbalanced." Then, out of nowhere, he produced a feast of food. I glanced over. Although my knowledge of trendy eateries was superficial, I recognized these were the beloved delicacies of youth, often requiring an hour's wait in line. I was teaching my students while he, from a completely unrelated discipline, audaciously attended my class. To make matters worse, he was the most attentive among a group of students who were otherwise engrossed in their phones, even asking questions. I was on the verge of tears from sheer frustration. During a night run on the track, I suddenly found him beside me, pressing closely as I stretched, taking advantage of the dimly lit corner to force my hand against his abdominal muscles. "Do you like it? You can't achieve cardio like this. Come to my place, and I'll teach you." Oh dear, he seemed to be serious. With no classes in the afternoon, I retreated to my study to revise my teaching PowerPoint. When I regained my focus, I had inadvertently titled a slide, "What should I do about Suyu?" This was a disaster. I hurriedly attempted to undo the action, but in my fluster, I ended up deleting the entire page. This state of mind was hardly conducive to work. Retreat. As I contemplated whether to play games or read, my brother's call came through. The age gap between my brother and I was significant, and I held a deep-seated respect for him, akin to a father figure. Amidst the chaos stirred by Suyu's explosive behavior, I had completely forgotten to update him on Suyu's condition. Upon learning that Suyu was well, my brother finally felt at ease. After your sister-in-law became pregnant, we neglected to consider Xiao Yu's feelings. Please keep an eye on him for me. Suddenly, I recalled that Suyu had become unusually clingy around the time my brother welcomed his own son. Their joy was so overt and unreserved that they overlooked the sensitive and solitary feelings of a teenager like Suyu. At the time, I was nearing graduation and preparing to study abroad, affording me ample time to accompany him. Could it be that this warmth had been misinterpreted as love? It must be so. Clarity dawned upon me, and I eagerly reached out to Suyu. I casually shared my insights, but on the other end, silence ensued. Confused, I glanced at the screen. The call was still active. "Suyu? I will pretend I did not hear any of that. I will come find you tomorrow. Is your connection bad? Surely there was signal at school? Was my explanation unclear?"
Suyu chuckled in frustration.
"How did you become a university teacher? How rude." Just as I was about to elaborate on my family matters once more, I heard him take a deep breath. Su-chi, I truly wish to be family with you. Ah, wasn't that sufficient? What more needed to be said? I felt an immense weight lift off my shoulders. Yet, Su-yu continued unhurriedly, family that engages in intimate relations daily. My hand trembled, nearly dropping the phone. His voice resonated through the call, filled with determination and fervor. Do you have any idea how much I long to touch you every night while lying beside you? The next day, I dared not face Su-yu and swiftly escaped on a business trip. I set all my statuses to busy, adopting a demeanor that signaled no one should disturb me. In the initial days, a sense of unease plagued me, fearing any message from Su-yu. Thankfully, he did not pursue me relentlessly. As I immersed myself in work, I gradually managed to forget about it all. I had always believed being a university teacher was effortless, merely needing to teach a few classes before living freely. Yet, upon entering this environment, I discovered it was far from the truth. To make progress, one must actively engage in projects, cultivate relationships, and ingratiate oneself with anyone and everyone. There were always a few unavoidable social obligations each month. After several rounds of socializing, I felt as though I were floating. Upon being returned home, I fumbled my way upstairs, retrieving my keys only to find myself unable to align them with the lock. How peculiar. Why was the lock spinning? Perhaps if I followed its rotation, I could insert the key. Engaged in a laborious experiment, I was suddenly interrupted by a somewhat exasperated voice behind me, a voice that seemed vaguely familiar. How much have you had to drink? My mind was clouded, and in a moment of distraction, I realized the key had been inserted. Thank you. I donned a professional social smile and turned to express my gratitude to the man, twisting the doorknob and swaying as I stepped inside. I fumbled with my tie, removed my watch, and unbuttoned my shirt, only to finally collapse onto the sofa, feeling utterly relaxed. However, something felt amiss. I propped myself up and glanced back, only to find someone standing by the sofa. Startled, my hair nearly stood on end as I almost tumbled off the couch. What are you doing trespassing here? The person took a step closer, unceremoniously gripping my jaw. Take a good look at who I am. My unfocused vision gradually cleared, and the figure became distinct. It was Su-yu. Who is Su-yu, you might ask? My nephew, yes indeed. He's also a new student at my school. What was he doing here? To help me align the keyhole? No, wait, he was here to confess his feelings. A jolt of realization snapped me back, and I felt the alcohol's effects begin to dissipate. I had been avoiding him all this time, and he had the audacity to corner me at my own doorstep. What should I do? In any case, tonight was not suitable for a conversation. I resolved to feign ignorance. I've had too much to drink. Let's talk tomorrow. Su-yu chuckled lightly, decisively stepping onto the sofa and straddling me. Well, this is convenient. It seems no matter what I do to you, you won't remember it. I quickly raised my hands to push him away. Su-yu. He pressed his hands against either side of my neck, a smile growing wider at the corners of his mouth. Isn't it obvious who I am? You're trying to avoid me, aren't you? At this point, I had no choice but to confront him head-on. Su-yu, I've already made myself clear last time. You said that what you understood and what I expressed were not the same. The bright light above was somewhat blinding. I shielded my eyes with my hand. It's not a matter of understanding differently. It's that I can only define our relationship as such. You and I can only be uncle and nephew. He clearly paused, then forcefully pried my hand away, compelling me to meet his gaze. Su-yu's expression darkened, his eyes filled with disbelief. Moreover, if you wish to pursue someone, you shouldn't force them. I have no feelings for you beyond familial ties. I feigned calmness, striving to make my words more persuasive, and after a moment's contemplation, I resolutely added, even if you were genuinely to pursue me, I wouldn't be swayed. You have never been my type. The moment those words left my lips, silence enveloped the room. After a prolonged pause, I felt a sudden lightness. He had stepped away from the sofa. Are you really that drunk? Foolish child. Only when one is inebriated can they speak so recklessly. It's better to suffer a short pain than a long one. My previous hesitations had indeed been my fault. It's getting late. I can't let you go home alone, so you should stay here. His response was as I had anticipated. No need. Hearing the decisive sound of the door closing, I slowly sat up. He was still just a child, so naive. Had it been me, I would have insisted on staying no matter what. Relentless persistence, gentle coaxing, what if, just what if, an opportunity arose. After all, some adults can wield words like daggers, yet their hearts are already softened. However, this also indicated that he seemed to lack romantic experience. After that night, encountering Suyu at school became a rare occurrence. Given the vastness of the campus, serendipitously crossing paths was indeed a challenge. Nevertheless, as an uncle, my concern for him remained unwavering. I frequently sent messages of familial affection. For instance, cheerful morning greetings adorned with naturesque beauty, school benefits he could take advantage of, and certificates that were now open for registration. He ignored them all. It's a miracle he hasn't T-blocked you yet, Su Lin remarked after perusing our chat history, tossing my phone back to me. Su Lin, a friend from my time studying abroad, had just returned to the country and was visiting me. We used to share everything, and he was far more mature and composed than I, so I confided in him about Suyu. I spun around in my office chair, distressed. I still haven't handled it well. Young love is fleeting. It changes quickly, just like us back then, he replied. Let us not dwell on the past. Su Lin had once pretended to be my boyfriend to help me fend off unwanted suitors, and inadvertently, we had developed real feelings for a brief period. However, we soon realized that friendship suited us better, and thus we parted ways. In hindsight, it was merely loneliness in a foreign land that had led to such entanglements. What I mean to say is, to position a relationship correctly, one needs to navigate through trial and error. We merely tried being a couple and found it awkward, only to settle comfortably as friends. While his words held merit, I feared that if I truly experimented with Suyu, I might sever our already tenuous familial bond. My brother would undoubtedly be furious. I closed my notebook and grabbed my coat. Let us eat and discuss this further. I'm feeling a bit hungry. Just then, Su Lin suddenly exclaimed, and I followed his gaze, discovering Suyu standing at the office door. Goodness, when did he arrive and how much had he overheard? His expression was neutral, likely indicating he had just arrived. I pursed my lips, striving to appear nonchalant. Suyu, what brings you here? He stepped inside and placed a box of pastries on my desk. Dad sent me some clothes and snacks, and asked me to bring you a box. I barely had time to feel pleased that he referred to Dad again, as my heart raced with anxiety. Su Lin, oblivious to the tension, picked up the pastries. Oh, this is the one you gave me before. It's nostalgic. He inquired if he could have a piece, while swiftly unwrapping it. Are we still having dinner? I urged him with mild annoyance, stealing a glance at Suyu, who had not left and was intently observing Su Lin. Su Lin noticed his gaze. So, this is your nephew? Is he free to join us? I think that is unnecessary. He is not familiar with you. I hastily declined for Suyu, hoping Su Lin wouldn't complicate matters. Sure. Suyu interjected at that moment, slipping his hands into his pockets and raising an eyebrow at me with a smile. After all, you still owe me a meal, right, uncle? I had never encountered such a predicament. The bubbling hot pot before me mirrored the turmoil within my heart. Initially, we had planned to dine at a restaurant, but Su Lin's last-minute decision to have hot pot made me suspect his intentions were not entirely innocent. As we exited the car, he had cast me a self-assured glance, leaving me utterly bewildered. Cuit. Do you remember the time we cooked hot pot in our room and triggered the smoke alarm? The landlord's face turned green. Haha. That meal had dire consequences. Su Lin means it. He should take a look at my face. It was turning a shade of green as well. I scooped a generous portion of meat into his bowl, urging him to eat instead of rambling on. Yet Su Lin swiftly shifted to a new topic. By the way, weren't you trying to gain muscle? Let me assess your progress later. Suyu placed his chopsticks down with a slight clatter, finally drawing Su Lin's attention. Big nephew, is there anything else you'd like to eat? Order more. No thank you. Suyu's tone was polite yet distant as he buried himself in his phone, responding to messages as if he were merely there to enjoy a meal. I didn't want him to feel neglected, but with Su Lin present, I was at a loss for other topics. After an awkward meal, I prepared to take Suyu back to school. Otherwise, he would miss the curfew, and I couldn't have that. Suyu got into the car without voicing any objections to my plan to drive him home. Today, he was remarkably docile. His excessive compliance made me uneasy. As we exited the car, he cast a glance at the passenger seat, where Su Lin was busy discussing what drinks we would have later. The door closed with a heavy thud. I steered the car away from the school and finally spoke. Now can we talk? Why are you acting so strangely? Su Lin touched his nose and remarked, it truly is quite amusing. I couldn't help but get involved. After I painstakingly mended our relationship, What shall I do if you disrupt everything? Have you genuinely repaired it? I remained silent, wielding my words with a decisive edge, yet my execution was ultimately sluggish and muddled, lacking in clarity. I could have taken a more considerate approach to gently guide him, but alas, I did not. My relationship with Su Yu had deteriorated even further than before our reunion. Yet, judging by his demeanor today, it seemed he might be ready to move on. If he is indeed able to let go, then even if he harbors resentment towards me, at least he would be on the right path again. Unable to resist Su Lin's insistence, I accompanied him for a drink to discuss future career plans, and by the time I returned home, it was already past midnight. Fortunately, I had no classes the following day. Hardly had I lain down for 2 minutes when I received a call from Su Yu, but the voice on the other end was not his. Is this teacher Su? Su Yu was taken to the emergency room. We couldn't reach the counselor. As I drove, my hands trembled on the steering wheel. Surely, nothing serious had happened. I had seen him enter the dormitory. Could he have fallen? Indeed, many students had previously fallen from their beds, but I recalled that the school had raised the guardrails. Was it the stairs? I regretted being so resolute in my rejection of him. If anything were to happen, I would carry that regret for a lifetime. I dared not dwell on my thoughts as I sped to the hospital. Upon arrival, I found no sign of Su Yu in the emergency room, and panic-stricken, I clutched a nurse and bombarded her with questions. After several inquiries, I learned he had been moved to a regular ward. Seeing Su Yu's classmates, I nodded to them and softly inquired about his condition. When he returned, he looked unwell. Then he mentioned stomach pain and fainted. Since you were the top contact in his phone, we called you first. The doctor said his diet has been too bland due to his long-term fitness routine, and suddenly consuming something too oily and spicy overwhelmed his stomach. I looked at Su Yu, who lay quietly on the bed with his eyes closed, and four attached to his arm, his face somewhat pale and his brows slightly furrowed, appearing uncomfortable. After exchanging contact information with his classmates, I ordered a car for them and insisted they message me once they returned to school before allowing them to leave. At some point, Su Yu was awakened by our chatter and turned to find me watching him. I pulled out a chair and sat down, somewhat curtly remarking, "Have you never eaten hot pot before? Look at the state you're in." "Ex-boyfriend?" he queried, as he had indeed overheard our earlier conversation in the office. I did not wish to respond, instead redirecting the conversation. "How am I supposed to explain to my brother that I didn't take care of you at all?" Su Yu chuckled, his voice hoarse indeed. After a moment of silence, he shifted over. "Come lie down." I glanced at the small space he had made for me. My brows involuntarily twitched. "Su Yu, do you have some misunderstanding about my figure? Or perhaps about yourself? We used to sleep like this in high school." His tone was insistent, and fearing that further resistance might disturb the other patients, I reluctantly lay down. In truth, I only managed to occupy the edge of the bed. Even the slightest movement would send me tumbling off. Suddenly, Su Yu wrapped his arm around my waist and pulled me closer, my back pressed firmly against his chest. I could not fall off now. The closeness was overwhelming. When he spoke, the resonance of his voice seemed to reverberate against my heart. "How does he test your muscle gain?" His hands slipped beneath my shirt, caressing my waist and trailing upwards, sending a shiver coursing through me. "Is it like this?" I nearly gasped, feeling a surge of anger as I sought to swat his hand away but remembered he was still hooked up to N4. "Su Yu, are you out of your mind? Your blood is backing up. You need to behave." His hand stilled, but his head leaned closer. "Sui, how far did you go with him? Why can you with him and not with me?" His transgressions ceased only after the discontented murmurs of other patients filled the air. Yet he held on to me tightly, just as he had when he was 15. Su Yu was not seriously harmed. He was discharged the following day, but I could not escape a severe reprimand from my brother. Feeling guilty, I refrained from arguing, bringing Su Yu home where he was to maintain a bland diet under my watchful eye for the next few days. I knew exactly what he craved, yet I pretended to be oblivious. Damn it, he wanted me. Fortunately, after a day passed, we coexisted peacefully. I relinquished the master bedroom to him and set up a small bed in my study. Su Lin was set to return to his hometown after a few days of staying with us, and I went to bid him farewell. Parting, he once again urged me on. "Just give it a try. He is such a good little pup. Even I'm tempted. If it doesn't work out, we can just go back to being friends, uncle and nephew." I promptly shoved him into the airport. On my way back, I received a call from the college administration, summoning me for some social engagements. However, this time I was mindful of Suyu at home, keeping my drinking in check. Upon returning, the house was shrouded in dimness, with a nightlight illuminating the corridor. I thought you wouldn't come back tonight. I was startled by the sudden voice, flipping the switch to reveal Suyu leaning against the wall, hands in his pockets, a displeased expression on his face. I retorted, "My coming or going is of no concern to you. It's your late-night vigil that is of interest." As I brushed past him, he abruptly seized my wrist, compelling me to turn around. Upon locking eyes, I noticed the redness at the corners of his eyes, and it dawned on me that he had been waiting for me. "Are you that reluctant to let him go?" At a loss for words, I realized the most dreadful thing was to see someone who had previously approached life with indifference suddenly become cautious. I feared that if I spoke harshly, his vulnerability would be laid bare. No, I had a dinner engagement at the college. A flicker of light ignited in his eyes. At that moment the night deepened, silence enveloped both inside and outside the house, and the air thickened between us. His breath grew nearer, and our proximity dwindled until our noses nearly touched. "Sui, give me a chance." His voice bore a hint of pleading. I felt a pang in my heart, reminiscent of the 15-year-old Suyu, calling out in his dreams for me not to leave. Touched, I surrendered my resistance. He interpreted my silence as consent, his youthful, fervent breath cascading down upon me, accompanied by his somewhat immature kiss. From gentle contact to deepening intimacy, his body radiated warmth. Noticing my lack of resistance, he seized the opportunity to push me onto the sofa. The moment he pressed down upon me, I felt the firmness of his desire. Panic surged within me, yet I fought to remain calm. Previously, Su Lin and I had stopped at this very point, bursting into laughter after locking eyes, unable to continue. Su Yu's fervent advances halted, his breaths quickening, yet his expression bore a hint of confusion. "See? Like this, so you would also realize that we were not suited for such a relationship." His kissing skills were lacking, but I had to admit that after enduring his relentless pursuit, I found myself somewhat enjoying it. Simultaneously, I secretly sighed in relief. Thank goodness, thank goodness. If he had pressed any further, I might have responded. Finally calming my breath, I was about to speak when I heard him, blushing, softly ask, "What do we do next? Teach me."
Dam Su Lin.
He was truly going to be the death of me. Suyu was not the type to engage in such antics. He actually wanted to continue. I had nearly resolved this entanglement, and now it was all for naught. I took a deep breath as my mind raced. How absurd. My thoughts ground to a halt, utterly derailed. I could clearly hear myself gently guiding him, instructing him on how to explore my body. He learned quickly, swiftly showcasing his ability to adapt and his eagerness to please, adjusting according to my subtle reactions. In the beginning, I could still recite calming mantras in my mind, but soon, my last shred of rationality was completely squeezed out. If only this were a dream, whereupon awakening, my nephew would still be my nephew and our relationship would not have transformed into something irreparable. Hiss, this rascal has truly relished the taste of this situation, hasn't he? Upon waking, I find him once again encroaching upon my personal space, and the agitation within me is utterly uncontrollable. I clenched my fist and aimed a punch at him, only to be effortlessly subdued and pressed into the soft embrace of the pillow. "Darling, you are quite fierce," he remarked. The pitiful Suyu, resembling a puppy begging for a chance, has vanished, replaced by a brazenly triumphant Suyu, grinning with unrestrained audacity. I let out a sigh. What shall I do? My dear elder brother? I have shared a bed with my nephew. What will happen if we part ways? He shall never again cross the threshold of the Su family home. Woe is me. I am the sinner of the Su family. So you turned me around, nuzzling closer. "Darling, I can come again," he proposed. "Absolutely not," I swiftly countered. "And kindly refrain from that absurd form of address. I am still your uncle at the very least. I've already stated that is no longer the case, but if you wish to indulge in such play, I am more than willing to oblige. Why must humanity grapple with the tumult of morality and inner turmoil? I confess, I do harbor a fondness for him. My heart cannot deceive me. No one can resist such candid and fervent emotions as his. Yet, I am no longer the 20-year-old he is. I am 8 years his senior, burdened by more pragmatic considerations. Can I truly continue down this absurd path with him? Another sigh escaped my lips.
Suyu.
How am I to explain this to my brother? Do you intend to keep it from him? Suyu rested his chin on his hand, looking utterly nonchalant. Huh? He knows. He knows? Those 4 words struck me like thunder, leaving me dazed. He knows? When did he find out? Did you tell him last night? Oh no. Oh no, I hadn't he noticed a thing. The end of the world couldn't he be more terrifying. I hastily reached for my phone, but my feeble waist could not withstand the sudden movement, and I found myself sitting back on the bed, clutching my back. Suyu regarded me with amusement. Do you think I terminated the guardianship for no reason? I informed Dad at the time, expressing my feelings for you and my desire to be with you. Why the sudden candor? What is with the youth today, confessing their feelings at any moment? But I should be astonished that my brother has known all along. And then, you weren't reprimanded? No, not at all. He said it was fine. After I began seeing you, we are still family. Internal resolution is far better than severing ties. My silence was deafening. Is this truly the sort of thing a rational person would articulate? Yet, inexplicably, I felt that my brother was indeed capable of such words. Suyu's hand found its way to my waist, gently kneading. But darling, would you care to join me for a workout next time? Your waist seems to be aging a bit. Be quiet. The end of the narrative. Thank you for listening, and until we meet again in the next story.